Jonas Söderström, and I'm the CEO of BioStock, and I have the honor to conclude this first day of the BioStock Life Science Summit with another exciting panel discussion. With us today, we have two highly skilled specialty fund managers focusing entirely on the life science business. And we are going to talk a little bit about, about the COVID-19 pandemic's impact on financing and investment strategies and so on, specifically from a Nordic versus a global perspective. So I'm very pleased to welcome today Ulrika Bjerke, who is Portfolio Manager and Chief Investment Officer of Arctic Aurora Life Science Fund, and Ingrid Teigland Akai, who is Managing Partner at Hadean Ventures. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Let's start with a short introduction of the both of you. I would like to give you each approximately 1 minute to say a few words about yourself and your funds and what your focus is. So why don't we start with you, Ulrika?
So my name is Ulrika Bjerke, and as you said, Jonas, I'm the CIO and also the co-founder of Arctic Aurora Life Science. That's a global healthcare fund focused on public biotech and pharma. We currently manage approximately 2 billion Swedish krona, $220 million US, and based in Stockholm.
Thank you very much, Ulrika. Ingrid, over to you. You have 1 minute.
Yeah, thank you, Jonas. It's great to be here with you. Obviously, I had the pleasure of being on this conference last year, which looked slightly different, but this is nice as well. Hadean Ventures is a European life science VC fund manager. We invest across Europe with a particular focus on the Nordic region. We have offices in Oslo and Stockholm. Approximately 85 million euros under management. And a team of 12 professionals, 8 on the investment side. And we invest quite broadly in the life science space. So we cover modalities like pharma, biotech, medtech, diagnostics, and digital health.
Thank you very much for those introductions. I'd like to dive straight into today's most dominant topic then. The COVID-19 pandemic and what kind of impact that has on investment, and particularly your respective funds' investment strategies. Could you give any concrete examples of any changes to your strategic focus that you've made, or specific concrete actions that you made after the pandemic hit us in early this year? Let's start with you, Ulrika.
Yeah, interesting to look back. It feels so long ago in a way, but when the pandemic started, we sat down and identified risks, and we started looking at the supply of active ingredients, and then called around to our companies, and then secondly, we focused on how they could manage their clinical trials, because we realized that the method of actually conducting those trials needed to be changed. And so that was kind of the first, in a way, analysis or research we did. On a more top-down perspective, our strategy is always to focus on innovation, true innovation, and high unmet medical needs. So in terms of changing the strategy, it didn't do that. It fell under our strategy. And it sort of gave us another area to focus on. So we have, of course, since then closely followed what has happened, which companies have been active, and we have also done some investments in the field.
Thank you very much, Ulrika. I was going to ask you, Ingrid, how, as a portfolio manager of a fund, how opportunistic can you be in a situation like this? Did Hadean make any specific strategic changes as a result of the pandemic striking us?
So opportunistic, I definitely think you can be, but but it hasn't sort of changed our investment strategy at all, really. As Ulrika also mentioned from their perspective, we have a strategy which goes on unmet medical need. That's sort of the fundamental driver here. And what we early did in the pandemic was that we recognized that there are lots of opportunities that will arise from this. But from our perspective, the whole pandemic is too, how it develops and how it has developed is too unpredictable to make a single investment strategy based on the pandemics alone. So that one we haven't. But what we have done and what our portfolio companies have done is that look at, is there something that could be added on to our portfolio companies that addresses the new needs of the pandemic, and that has happened. The most prime example is, of course, our vaccine company, Themis, which had a vaccine platform, and they early on added a vaccine candidate to their development pipeline. And that ended up with basically the company being acquired by Merck, and Merck's now lead candidate for a COVID vaccine is the one they got from our portfolio company, Themis. So that's obviously a very good example. But we also have another portfolio company in Stockholm that is at Gano. It's developing products for unmet medical need in the lung space, and the first indication is pulmonary hypertension. And that is a condition that we also see in COVID-19 patients. So they have sort of continued their lead program and process, but in addition to that, they have added a project which goes on COVID-19 patients. So absolutely, we're trying to look for the opportunistic opportunities, at the same time not rely on the pandemic as a single alone standing investment thesis.
Thank you, Ingrid. So you mentioned that there are definitely opportunities that arise then in a situation like this. When it comes to, if you look at investing in COVID-19 related projects or companies involved in that area, which is basically the definition of an unmet need, or has been now for a while, maybe that is about to change. Let's hope so. But are there any specific, whether it's on a global scale or more local Nordic scale, are there any specific pros and cons or definite risks that we need to take into consideration as investors when it comes to investing in this type of sort of disruptive situation, specifically COVID-19 related projects or companies? What do you think about that, Ulrika?
So the pros is obviously that there is a lot of investment opportunities, and also you feel that you are doing also something as positive side effects by helping those companies to develop. So obviously there is a lot of investment opportunities. We, for example, invested in a company pre-IPO, which actually went public now during pandemic, that develops a drug similar to remdesivir that you probably all know about, but which can be taken oral and obviously much earlier in the disease, and therefore it can be used at home before people get into hospitals. And that's also a potential drug that can be on the shelf waiting to treat other viruses when they arrive. So you need to find investments that have a future even after COVID, because when this is over, you have to have a sustainable business model. One other thing I would add is that you can't, like old finance theory, you can't put all eggs in one basket. You need to diversify your investment, and rather, instead of betting on one vaccine company, follow them closely, but still create a small portfolio, I would say, of companies involved in the space, because it's still very early to try to pinpoint exactly one winner. So risk diversification and thinking about the whole platform in terms of sustainable business going forward, and of course based on good science.
Yeah, that's a piece of good advice there, not to put all your eggs in one basket. So if you are an investor then looking to put together a portfolio of highly current COVID-19 related projects and so on, since there has been quite a plethora of those types of projects arising now during the last 6 months or so, there are also quite a bit of soft money going into the possible finding a solution to the COVID problem. And some companies and some projects are getting grants support from both individual states or the EU, for example. What's your take on this, Ingrid? Could you, as an investor, look to these sort of qualifications the confirmation that these companies are in fact they have a quality stamp on them when they receive the soft money? Is that something you could piggyback on as an investor, you think, Ingrid?
So I think it's an interesting place to start to get ideas. So I think that's a good idea. At the same time, it's important to keep in mind what is the purpose of this soft funding, right? It's sort of spreading the bets, right? So it's their job to try to get as many opportunities as possible and to develop as many opportunities as possible, well aware of that, the probability of each one of them succeeding is probably not very high. So that's something to keep in mind. But I think it's an interesting point to get new ideas and see what's going on in the space for sure.
Yes, and seeing as COVID-19 has been very dominant in the news flow as of lately, and so many projects and so many things going on in that field. If we totally look aside that, what kind of projects or what kind of niches are you looking at right now or keeping a close eye on? What kind of areas are you interested in specifically right now? If I ask you first, Ulrika.
So as we are a public fund, or a fund looking at the public equity, it's not that we focus on any specific disease area, but naturally oncology is obviously the largest one, and it's also the largest one in our focus. So oncology is very important, but also more and more we see inflammation and immunology, and we see them all in a way integrated. So we look a lot at the most innovative companies within the field, and we do that as I said in the beginning. We constantly scan the universe for companies having the best innovations directed to the big unmet medical needs.
Thank you. And yes, oncology always being a very interesting field to follow, of course. Ingrid, do you have any specific niche or key niches that you are looking extra closely at right now besides the COVID situation?
So we are indication agnostic. So we don't sort of have any sort of top-down areas that we focus on in particular. However, that said, an area that I find quite interesting is the digital health space. The digital health space has been sort of evolving area that has taken quite a lot of time. It has sort of been slower than probably most people have expected. But I think that the pandemic has sparked an acceleration. So we do see now that there are things that we've been waiting for implementation that are sort of happening a little bit faster right now. So that is an area that I find interesting to follow, see how that develops sort of in the short to midterm going forward.
Do you have any specific companies in mind that you are looking specifically at?
Well, we have one sort of pure digital health company in our portfolio right now, which is a Finnish company called Neuroevent Labs. Obviously they are sort of in the early commercial phase in the Nordics, and we could see that with the first wave, that was a difficult situation because the hospitals shut down and focused only on COVID patients. So sort of in the immediate effect of the pandemic, it was quite challenging for them in the spring. However, we do see also that going forward, they'd have a solution that, if it had been implemented, it would have been easier for the hospitals during a situation like this. So that is also sparking interest. So that can help them going forward in the midterm.
Yes, and if we sort of raise our gaze a little bit, despite the pandemic, the cash flow into the sector, into life science and into IPOs and follow-up rounds has been quite robust given the circumstances. Do you think this is something that will continue? I'll ask you first, Ulrika. What do you think?
Yes, I do. 2020 has been a record year in terms of IPOs. I think it was up 70 IPOs in the US biotech market in September, year to date in September. So it's as you say, Jonas, it's been a remarkable year. Very strong interest in the sector, and I actually believe that it will continue. We see so much innovation. We are kind of takers from Ingrid's earlier fund. But we are really seeing so much innovation based on the increased knowledge in biology, all the possibilities in terms of the toolings and the understanding of the mechanisms. So yes, we see biotech continuing attracting interest.
And would you say that is also true for sort of more early phase financing and the kind of capital going into companies and of that stage? Is it the same there? Can we still have a positive outlook despite everything?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the sector definitely has a tailwind, and there is definitely increased interest in the sector. So I definitely I'm very positive on the sector's behalf going forward for sure. In sort of the early stage companies, it's been sort of a mixed picture in terms of fundraising for them. It's been sort of I would say, bifurcation in a way. So you have sort of the companies that are slightly more mature that has been able to leverage this interest in the sector, and at the same time we've seen some early stage companies that has had a tougher time because on one hand there's been a lot of interest in healthcare in general, but also perhaps people have been also a little less risk willing when it comes to illiquid investment. So it hasn't been a great year for everybody, but general for the sector, I think the outlook is very positive.
Yeah, yet you touch upon the risk factors, and I would like to ask the both of you to sort of name the biggest risks going forward now, looming over the market in the upcoming year or so. What specific red flags are you looking for? If I start with you, Ulrika.
Oh, we don't have so much time, I think. But I think it's a good thing to have the US election behind. I think in terms of US healthcare policy, I think the Democrats will focus on trying to widen the volume of patients or the coverage, which is positive for the volume demand. And but of course, I think it will be a lot of short-term headline risk because of to understand what will happen in the Congress in total in the Senate after Christmas. So that I think will probably be a bit of a noise. But otherwise, I think the interest, of course, in the sector, if you look at the public side, it's important to get valuations right. And we have been talking about the fantastic vaccine companies, for example, and there is a lot of expectations in some of the companies. So I think getting the valuations right is important. And then on a macro, more macro level, of course, I think the most important thing is to get societies back to work, to get people, unified, and to get an improved situation for many countries. This is kind of an extreme situation, and I really hope that you will get stability next year, even though I think it will take some time. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, definitely. We all need hope, especially after a year like this. Ingrid, I think you mentioned disruption that the pandemic has caused some of companies that haven't been able to sort of go through with their clinical trials and being late in that respect. That's of course a very concrete risk in these situations. Is there anything else that you are on the lookout for risk-wise?
So that is sort of the primary thing we are looking at right now for our portfolio companies, because most of them are in clinical trials, and we really saw disruption in the first wave, and that is kind of the one thing we are really tracking right now, well into the second wave. So that is going to be very interesting to follow. So far, the experience in the second wave is that hospitals are managing it much better than first wave. But obviously, it will all depend on the capacity they have, taking care of the COVID patients and running trials at the same time. So that is definitely sort of the main factor. And a product of that is timelines, obviously, and runway and financing. But that is sort of often a product of being able to run trials on time.
Well, let's hope that the promises of the recent data for vaccine candidates is going to be fulfilled. And as of now, I see that our time is running out. So I would like to thank the both of you very much for taking the time to join us today. It's been a pleasure having you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.